Hello Art 240 students. If you missed class, here is a quick 15-minute video tutorial about what you missed regarding color mixing and matching. The average human eye can distinguish between about 10 million colors. That's pretty impressive, although they're only different in 3 specific ways. The first of these is called hue. It's the color we normally associate with the color wheel. For example, red or orange or yellow or green or blue or purple or violet. Hues can also be less general, such as orange-yellow and blue-green. These more specific hues can be seen in your pastel set too. For example, they give you a yellow-green and an orange-yellow. The differences are subtle, but sometimes they're very helpful when you're actually mixing specific colors. Some people like to describe hue as a temperature. So for example, red, orange, and yellow hues tend to be warmer, and violet, blue, and green hues are oftentimes referred to as cooler colors. The second way a color can be different from another color is simply value. How light or dark is the color? In their pure state, hues have inherent values. For example, some are just a little bit lighter or darker than others. We can lighten a hue by adding white, or even darken it by adding black. The important thing to remember is it's still the same hue, it's just a different value now. So when we take the hue red and we add white to it, we make pink. Pink is still the hue red, it just happens to be a lighter version of it. The third and final way one color can be different from another color is intensity. Basically, how pure or dense is the color. Sometimes we call this saturation. In my experience, this is the most confusing of the 3 to understand. It's because many people don't know how to actually lower the saturation of a color in a way that doesn't change the other 2 properties. For example, to lower the saturation of this yellow, people will oftentimes add its complement, which is purple, which I'll make from just mixing magenta and blue. You can see that the purple actually really does work. It neutralizes the yellow and makes it more gray. Purple, which is the mixing complement of yellow, certainly did gray my mix when I added it. However, it also darkened it, which I didn't want. If we're not careful, we run the risk of throwing off the balance between the other 2 properties of color, hue and value. We saw that mixing purple into yellow darkened the mix because purple is inherently darker than yellow. And if when we pick a complement we're not very careful and it's not an exact opposite color, we run the risk of shifting the hue too. And maybe we don't want that. So how do we lower the intensity of a color like this yellow without accidentally shifting the value or the hue? It's simple. We just use a set of grays that has a range of values. Now let's try that out just to prove it works. First, we'll start with the same light yellow, which I'll put down right here. Next, I'm going to look at my range of grays and find a gray that's the same value as the yellow, and then I'll mix it into it. Of these 3 basic grays, it's pretty clear the lightest gray is the one we're going to need. And there you have it. It's dulled down the yellow without changing the value. Now I'll place the pure yellow next to it again so you can see the difference in intensity. And I'll try the same thing with this burnt umber, which is brown. It looks to be a little bit closer to the middle gray. Now let's try ultramarine blue, which is the darkest of the 3 colors we've been using. It's clearly closer to the darker gray, but maybe not exact. Looks like the gray is a little darker than the blue. Adding white or black can also affect the intensity of a color. Here's an example of me mixing white into the brown, to give you an example of how different it looks compared to the gray mix. Adding white didn't lower the intensity of the brown as much as adding the gray. For some darker colors, especially if you're using paint, adding just a little bit of white will actually increase the intensity of the color. It's simply because they're so dark in their original state that we don't get a sense of their real color, until they're lightened a little bit. Now let's add some color to our project. You'll be using this 15-piece Rembrandt set, plus 3 additional Rembrandt grays. You will also use little scraps of the gray paper we'll be drawing on. These will help us get a more accurate match with the colors. The paper has a slightly different color on the front compared to the back. We'll be adding color to the corners of this strip. Okay, here we go. Let's mix and match some colors. To begin, I just need to figure out which color to solve first. I like to tackle more pure colors first, like this blue in the background. Pure colors are less nuanced and easier to solve. First, I need to figure out which blue it is. Is it the blue that leans towards the green side, or the blue that leans towards the purple side? Or maybe it's something right down the middle. I'll make a test by coloring in the corner of this scrap of gray paper. This blue's a little light, and it probably could be a little less green too. I'll just mix in a little bit of the darker blue, which is ultramarine blue. Definitely closer. When I correctly match the color, the corner on the gray strip will just disappear into the background. It looks like I got it. The corner of the gray strip just disappears. Now I just need to mix that same color on my drawing. Here are some pastel tips. When the pastel lines are spaced out like this, it's hard to get them to blend together to make a uniform tone. Keeping the lines close together, like the example above, makes a more uniform color. The more you layer the pastel, the thicker it gets and the easier it is to blend. Plus, it's more luminous. Avoid blending the pastel with your fingers because it just dulls the colors. You should also explore making marks with varying degrees of pressure. Sometimes you want marks that are as thin as a spider's web. These thin lines can be woven together to create delicate layers at the surface of the color. Using a lighter touch allows you to modify colors more slowly. Other times you may just want to aggressively pile on a color. Hey, it looks like we have a match. Now we'll solve this yellow portion on the fruit. Color in this area seems to be somewhere between the yellow that leans towards green and the yellow that leans towards orange. Let's try a few mixes out. First, we'll start with the yellow that has just that slightest touch of green in it. It looks like it's just a touch too cool. We'll go ahead and add some of that warmer orangish yellow now. It's definitely closer now, but our corner seems more intense than the fruit, so we could just add a little gray to help it match better. Wow, it's really getting close, but it's still missing something. Maybe just a touch of orange. And now I'll just lower the intensity just a little bit more. That's it, the corner's disappearing. We got a match. Now it's time to make that same color on our drawing. Okay, this one's a little trickier. Let's start by taking a guess at the hue. It's definitely in the green family, but not a green that's too blue or even too yellow. It seems right in the middle, like the green in my box, which is Viridian. This could be the right hue, but it's hard to tell because the pure green from my box is much darker and more intense than the leaf. I can solve both problems by mixing a light gray into the green. This will both lighten and lower the intensity of the hue. That worked really well. We're definitely on the right track. That's a match. Just like the other two colors, we'll go ahead and make this green on our drawing now. In your master copy, you'll proceed the same way, by using small paper strips to mix and match colors. Eventually your efforts will fill the whole drawing, which will become a color replica of Huglot's painting. Now sit back, relax, and watch as I make a few more colors. See if you can follow my thought process as I adjust colors using hue, value, and intensity. Then have some fun and try it yourself.